we won't actually ever get to lasting change. We'll get moments of heroic change without a change in the actual experience of kids. I'll close with this story. My favorite play was this Robert Emmett Sherwood play called Abe Lincoln in Illinois, and saw it when I was in college here. And there's the moment where Lincoln is elected president, and he is leaving Springfield to go to DC, and he gives a speech on the back of a train. And you have to love the audacity of Sherwood, because Lincoln actually gives a real speech that day. And Sherwood uses about the first 5 lines of Lincoln's actual speech, and then he rewrites the end of Lincoln's speech for him to make it better, and he does. And he says this. He says, Lincoln tells a story about an Asian monarch, an East Asian monarch, who sends his 3 wisest people up to the mountains to discover one thing that will in all circumstances be true. He said, go up, spend as much time as you need, but bring back to me the one eternal truth that you can find. So they go and they spend a year, and they come back and they say, we found it. And he says, what is it? And they say, and this too shall pass away. And this too shall pass away. And Lincoln says, in moments of great tribulation, that may come as some comfort. But let us live to believe that it is not so. Let us live to believe that we are in the process of building something that shall not pass away. That we can cultivate a strength within us and an emotional and intellectual world without us, where we build certain sets of values that shall not pass away. That was the ambition of the civil rights movement when it began. That is the call of our work now, which is to say, after we have all gone, after this work has been done, let us leave something that shall not pass away, which is the deep belief that no one will ever doubt that equality means every kid, every day, that every first grader walks into a class and 12 years later all of them come out ready for college regardless of their race or their income or how many books they had on their shelves in their house. That is the lasting truth that we're after, but it will only be done with a great deal of work from the folks in this room. So thank you so much for being here, and thanks for your... Thank you. I didn't actually come back to the podium for you to have to applaud. I forgot that I was going to do Q&A too. So I started to walk off and realized I wasn't supposed to do that. But if there are questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And again, I think there's probably 90% of what I just said was probably wrong, but hopefully it at least spurs some conversation for the rest of the day and a half on where we might be heading. So if there are any questions, comments, feedback, I'd love to hear it. Yes, ma'am. Nice to see you too.
My question is, I know that a lot of the work. Thanks. I know that a lot of the work that happened in Colorado to move this was about the coalition building, and obviously there are a lot of us who are doing advocacy work at the state level. Can you talk some about that in terms of what the different advocacy and coalition work was like?
Yeah, great question. So we worked on the belief that to make an argument that it was in the public interest, what you needed was for every legislator to hear from every type of their constituent group. So normally on this, what you would have is you'd hear one day from a lobbyist for a teacher association, one day for a lobbyist from the school boards, and that was it. What we wanted to do was build a coalition that represented all of the groups. So we brought, we went after student and teacher groups, parent groups, business groups, nonprofit groups. We had a number of critical partners in this. So Stand for Children is a strong partner in Colorado who really helped us grow this coalition. Democrats for Ed Reform is an early and leading partner who helped build this coalition. But the result, and then they in turn organized their groups and we organized broadly. But what happened at the end, which I think is really powerful, and if people who've been in state legislatures or national policy know this, what happened was we built an explicit strategy that said, here are 10 targets, our 10 target votes. And what's going to happen is on Monday, a business leader who runs the business down the street from her shop is going to come in and talk to her. On Tuesday, the principal from 2 of her local schools are going to come talk to her. On Wednesday, 3 of her teachers are going to come talk to her. On Friday, the president of her local school board is going to come. And then on Monday, we're going to start again with parents and students and teachers and business leaders. And what you had is, when you're a legislator getting that, and the only opposition you're hearing is from the same individual interest group over and over, you start to feel the sense that this is a public interest question and not a self-interest question. And so I would just say that briefly, that was the entirety of the success for us, was can you build a coalition broad enough to give people the cover to make what is a very hard decision. And I'll say, I know she's coming later today, critical part for this was the AFT was a key partner for us on this. Randy Weingarten very courageously didn't need to get herself into a Colorado piece of legislation, and our Colorado AFT president is tremendous, a woman named Brenda Smith. They came and lobbied in favor of the bill. And Randy called the Denver Post and said, I want you to print this quote that says why we support it and why this is important, because then what you have is people of all stakeholder groups saying this is the right thing to do. And so I think there are moments of real leadership, and I really feel like Randy showed one there.
All different people coming together to pursue that school. I think it's a lot harder when you're talking about segregation based
Yep.
on residential patterns.
Yep.
So I'm curious to hear what sort of your thoughts are
Yep.
on overcoming the segregation patterns that are inherent to people's choices about their living conditions that sort of set up the system that we currently have.
You're 100% right on this. My wife and I have this ongoing debate. She believes it's all about residential, it's all about housing patterns rather than school patterns. I'd say 2 things. One is, this is why it's incumbent upon us to first build a quality of schools that are strong enough to attract back middle-class families that we're losing. That's part 1. But the second is, and if I had a board I would show you, the second is, even within those contexts, there are ways to think differently about how you structure schools, even given the disparities. So the short example I'll tell you is a civil rights issue I had no idea I'd walk into, but Peter Groff knows it well, is the neighborhood I live in, a subsection of Denver. You basically take, it's like telling a parable from the 1950s, but you basically take a cross-section of streets. Quebec runs north-south, Montview runs east-west. And northeast quadrant of that neighborhood is a new neighborhood called Stapleton, where the old airport used to be, very predominantly white and professional, right? Southeast quadrant of that is almost 100% Latino. Northwest quadrant of that is almost 60 or 70% black. So you have, and that whole span, that if you drew that whole thing in a picture, that whole span is probably 3 miles, full radius. And what you have there are a system of 3 elementary schools here, and 3 here, and 3 here, that each draw only from their own neighborhoods. So you have 9 elementary schools that have between them a population that is 30, 30, 30. But within them, each one of them is 90, 10. Right? And there's nothing that requires that to be that way, other than that someone at that meeting at 10 a.m. that none of us attended drew the attendance zones so that they matched exactly the neighborhood geographies of race and class. And so, I'd love to see us overturn Milliken versus Bradley for folks who are legal folks in the crowd here, and say you can do integration plans across districts, so you could merge urban districts with suburban cores, and you could draw school districts like pie slices instead of like the concentric circles they're in now. But I think even without doing anything so dramatic, you can think about organizing neighborhoods. In most cities, we still have diversity that is close. It's just still walled off. So it's great that the one thing I was handed to do was a card to tell myself what to introduce next. There was one card with like a name this big on it, and I still managed to leave it on the paper, on the table. But I do know that it's my cue to introduce Kenley, who's going to come up next. So thank you all so much for being here, and thanks for your time.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for those inspiring words. We really appreciate the time and your thoughts. My name is Kenley Okada, as he mentioned. I'm one of the co-chairs of the, or executive board at the Education Club, and I just have a few announcements. First and most boring, maybe, there's a car parked downstairs that was valet parked, and they took their keys, and it's blocking another car. So it's a black Audi A6, license Connecticut 605 WDN. Please Move it. Thank you. But more importantly, in a few moments, we're going to ask you to move to the first panels of the day. And the panels fill up quickly, and so if there's a particular panel that you're interested in going to, please get to that room early because they do fill up. And the fire marshal has said that we are not allowed to put any more rooms, any more people in the room once they become full. So if you don't get there early, or if you don't get there before it's full, we're going to have to ask you to attend another panel. Don't go yet, please. The other things that we want to say is that there is an electronic survey we're going to be sending out after the conference. And we really appreciate you filling that out because this is an ever-evolving conference where we want to improve every single year. And the last announcement is that the second panel in the afternoon is going to start at 2:15 and not 2 o'clock as originally planned, so please be aware of that. Again, thank you so much, and have a great day.